Okay, hello everybody.
You doing, Nick?
Welcome to Historic Preservation Commission meeting, September 2nd, 6:31. Okay, you want to take roll call?
Yeah, just let me get the YouTube finished up here.
Sure.
All right. Okay. Kim McGee is not going to be here. Carol Klein is not here. Jess Pedersen is not here. Nick Michon,
Here.
Eric Dowd,
Here.
Eric Seacrest will not be here. Melissa Jones, here. John Williams,
Here.
Heather McDonald. Here. Right. There you go. Carol is coming.
Terrific. Are there persons present not on the agenda?
No.
No.
Nope.
Okay. Okay, well, we're lucky enough to have CT here today. Sorry. Moving backward. Item number 3, consent agenda approval of August 5th, 2021 minutes. Any questions, comments, concerns about the minutes from August 5th meeting? Okay, hearing no comments, questions, concerns, or questions, someone like to make a motion to approve the minutes?
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
I guess I'll second.
All in favor? Opposed? Okay, minutes are approved. Item number 4, CT, comprehensive plan update. We're lucky enough to have CT here. Keith and Dave, looks like they're here.
We are.
Hello, gentlemen. Thank you
Hi,
for
Nick.
joining us very much.
Good evening.
Yeah, it's our pleasure.
Do you want to just go ahead and drive this? Go ahead and give us a presentation and tell us your findings.
I do. Let's see. It's okay. I'll just share my screen. Can everybody see the lead slide there? Yeah, so good evening, everyone. Nick, I know you have been participating in the monthly meeting, so you know a lot of this content. You all saw the slide presentation in your packet, so I know that there's a lot of things that we want to cover from your points of view as a Historic Preservation Commission. I wanted to just put a lot of this information in here so we can go to it. If there's something that you saw in the packet that you want to drill down into, great. I don't want to belabor too much of the detail in each slide because I want to make sure that you all have enough time to kind of share your thoughts with us from the Preservation Commission, what your thoughts are in terms of the comp plan. But again, I just put a lot of information into the slide deck so that we could make sure we have a clear collective understanding of the background and where we've been, where we're going, and how we're moving forward. So feel free to interrupt and ask questions anywhere along the line, but I'll be pretty quick on the first few slides here. So just what we'd like to cover and what we normally cover when we're talking to various commissions, committee groups, the Planning and Zoning Commission is bringing everybody along to understand what the community engagement process has all been about, what we've completed to date, and what we're still planning to do, but the things that we're hearing along the way. So I've inserted a lot of slides that kind of gives you an idea of what the kinds of topics that we've been talking about, what we've been hearing from the community. So that's a big part of the process along the way. But then just to focus on, this is a comprehensive plan update. So typically communities might do a comprehensive plan every 15 years or so. This is a midterm, 9 years into it update. And so we've been directed to specifically address very specific topics as a part of a supplement to your comprehensive plan. So it's not a complete rewrite. These are the items, the plan focus areas that we've been asked to look at by the planning department to really understand the current vision and goals that were identified in the 2013 plan and what they might be today, looking at current market conditions, what the growth and capacity is for the community, mobility, transportation, aging in the community, and climate action plan. You have a pretty robust climate action plan. We're not rewriting the climate action plan at all, but we are looking for current trends and gaps that the climate action plan may or may not have missed. And then we want to make sure here this evening we have a discussion from your point of view as the Preservation Committee. So again, this is a supplement. It's not a complete plan rewrite. There are specific chapters that we're focusing in on that we will be providing a supplemental document to the Planning Director, Janet Buck, and the Planning and Zoning Commission to address these specific areas, these key plan elements that I described earlier. But also there's 3 specific geographical areas, the downtown, the HCC zone, the downtown north area just to the north of downtown, and these areas that are designated as high density residential areas. There's been a little sort of questions about what that means, that last item, the high density residential areas. We're not being asked to look at reclassifying those residential areas from a zoning standpoint, but looking at those areas and looking at how we can help improve the town's toolbox to ensure compatibility as development occurs within that by right zone, right, within those high density residential areas, making sure that as those projects, those parcels are developed over time, that the tools are in place to make sure that there's architectural and site design standards, development standards to ensure compatibility with adjacent properties. So those are the 3 geographical areas that we've been asked to look at. We are precisely at the midterm point of the plan. We started in early June. We've been meeting with the Planning and Zoning Commission every month. We're going to be meeting with them on the 16th of September, coming up here pretty quickly. We are delivering an existing conditions summary report. It's a memorandum of findings, both technical findings in those technical areas that I described, but also from a community engagement standpoint, what we've been hearing. We will have a draft future land use map. So you have a future land use map in your 2013 plan. We're asked to update that map accordingly. And then on the 16th with the Planning and Zoning Commission, we're really, I think we've been talking about this, Dave and I, my colleague here, we've been talking about this, it's not so much policy recommendations, but draft recommendations, things that we're being hearing from the community on those topical items that I just described. What are some of the recommendations that we see going forward as we start to develop in October implementation strategies, and then a draft later on in November, a draft supplemental report to the planning department. So not so much policy recommendations, although key recommendations as we see going forward. So we're right at the midway point and we're starting to draft these particular elements going forward here. Again, just a quick overview. We have developed a pretty darn robust community engagement program. And this list is showing you some of the things that we've done to date. We've met with a lot of different community members. We've met with a lot of different boards and commissions along the way. We've met with developers. We've done open house events. We've done charrettes, design charrettes to really attack those items that we've been talking about. So this list is, and everything, by the way, is listed on the project website. So if you're wanting to go back into it, we're trying to update the project website periodically. And so I think it's pretty much up to date in terms of the community engagement events. One of the highlights I think that we're excited about that occurred a few weeks ago is this all Spanish speaking community event where we literally trained members who are fluent and speak primarily Spanish as their primary language. We trained them on what the comp plan is about, and they facilitated and ran their own meeting. And so this was really great. And we heard a lot of great information at this particular meeting. I personally have not ever seen this done before. I mean, Dave and I have done lots of meetings where we've translated information, but to have a training session and let those folks actually do their own meeting as it relates to the comp plan, it was pretty cool to watch. So we're pretty excited about that your community actually did this, and we're going to continue to work with these folks again later in October. Some of the key findings that we've been hearing collectively through all this input, this is a word cloud. It basically tells us kind of programmatically things we're hearing: more affordable housing, preserving small town character, traffic is a big consideration, slowing or some sort of growth controls. Those are the big things that are standing out in our minds when we kind of go through these processes. And then we've been ranking the things that we've been hearing. So, and a lot of this is actually consistent with what you found in your 2013 plan, by the way. So really focusing on locally affordable housing. Probably should divert away from the term attainable, but more affordable housing for the workforce, preserving Carbondale small town character, managing growth, traffic congestion, focus on sustainability and climate, and protecting the natural environment and open spaces. What that we're interpreting that is really think about inwardly focusing growth rather than expanding the boundaries and looking at annexations and development beyond the boundaries. A lot of these things are consistent with what you all heard back in 2013. There's also a lot of different themes that are not secondary, but supportive along the way, supporting local businesses, making sure Carbondale is accessible and affordable, diversity in the community, whether it's through social equity, housing, downtown specific issues is parking, urban form, looking at the HCC zone district and trying to make some recommendations on how to make development a little more accommodating, maybe perhaps. Water supply, the infrastructure has been coming up, mobility issues, the RAFTA circulator, that's not really a circulator, talking about that and how can we improve that in the community. And then universal access, aging in the community is a big topic. So in terms of historic preservation, the survey responses, we asked a couple of questions, and I believe, I might be wrong about this, but I think we got direct input from you all on asking these questions. But, do you think having historic downtown is an important strategy for an economic boost in Carbondale? And clearly people are saying yes. The second question is a little tricky. Would you like to see incentives to preserve historically significant buildings? Incentives can be anything. They can be regulatory incentives. They could be financial. There could be other strategies that are interpreted as incentives. But clearly, people were interpreting that as an important strategy to promote historic cultural resources in your community. I think we just need to really understand what we mean by incentives. And I'd love to hear your comments on that here this evening. Every survey, we try to understand who the demographic is for that survey. A lot of people who are, if you look at the second question, how old are you? Over 50% of the respondents are over 55 age population in the community. And there's a trend towards, that demographic actually increasing. So it's kind of not surprising. Those folks are most engaged in these processes, but we always want to try to improve the responses from younger generation populations as well. So we do try to keep track of who we're hearing from, where they live, and what their trends are to really try to understand the responses that we're getting. What's next, as I pointed out in the project timeline, we're going to be meeting with the project steering committee, which is the Planning and Zoning Commission, 3 more times. The 16th, September 16th is the next visit, next week, 2 weeks. We do have another virtual Spanish-speaking public event coming up on the 19th of October, as well as a follow-up second virtual public meeting on the 21st. You all are encouraged to participate in these as well. And then later on in the fall, winter, we'll be looking at presenting a draft supplemental comp plan update to the Planning and Zoning Commission and certainly to the Board of Trustees for approval and adoption. There might even actually be some more follow-up focus group sessions. We've met with, I thought I had a slide in here that focused on the focus groups. We have 6 different focus groups, topical focus groups that we've met with. And what I'm saying here on the last bullet is that we've had great input from those focus groups, and we might be revisiting with them when we get to the unveiling of the draft comprehensive plan as well. That's what that last bullet is about. Dave, do you want to kind of go through quickly so I don't do all the talking here and just hit on some of the highlights in the next 3 slides?
Yeah, I'll try to get these kind of fast. These next couple sections are really our focused areas that we dove in a little bit deeper with, including with a couple of sub-consultants who are certainly experts in these things. So try to do my best to hit the high points. But this next couple pieces are really digging into the, what's happening as far as growth in the town. That's just a big question. Is it all coming at once? How is it looking compared to trends? And let's look forward at how we can deal with capacity of new growth in the town. That was kind of what we wanted to really dig into from a mapping and land use perspective. Next slide. So we had our market analysts, sub-consultants do a bunch of looking at projections, and they used a number of different sources and triangulated a number of things to get to, and then applied, Carbondale realistic parameters to those so that they could get some idea of what's going to happen in 10 years. The upshot is looking at like it might be about 1,200 new residents. When you look at how many average number of residents per household you have there in the community, ends up that's about 450 new housing units in the next 10 years, based on that midline projection. Now, when you look at the pipeline, what's been happening up to date, you've had about 382 units in the pipeline, meaning either very recently completed, under construction, or permitted. It's about 75% of that 450 right there. So that activity, you're kind of, the market is kind of doing its job meeting the demand. A lot of these projects that you see here are kind of that missing middle housing, and it's always it's not to say you can't fully hit that, but in the next couple slides here we'll talk about how that might continue to look. The take home here is that that gap between the projected what may happen at the high confidence level and what actually will happen, all those new housing units can really be accommodated within your areas that are available, either vacant or available for redevelopment at this point in time. There's no need to even consider growing out. Just a matter of making sure that everything's compatible with its adjacencies and the infill occurs the right way. Just as a map of our focused geographic areas, downtown north, downtown, and the portions of the residentially zoned areas in the orange there. Existing in those areas, you have about 633 units. That's about a third of the town's housing right there, in a very compact and dense way a lot of times. So that's always a good sign. If you look at downtown, these red boxes here, and so we're kind of switching now to what's available out there. Those are the projections. Now let's think about where's it going to go. So we look at the downtown, most of it's zoned that historical commercial core, which everybody here is very interested in, but nothing's happening there. So, and that's what these red parcels are illustrating. And it's not that nothing's happening there, but it's not really happening in a efficient way or in a fast way and in a way that would meet the demand in your downtown core to add to activity and do all these great things that we want downtown to be. So we asked around about what as part of our engagement process, what's that HCC zone look like, and what would it need to be to maybe promote the type of growth that we want to see and accommodate housing and affordable housing,
and ensuring the character that you guys are probably very concerned with as well.
Yeah. Similarly, downtown north, huge focus area. We're starting to see some consensus about the vision for this site. Certainly looking at an extension of downtown, not a standalone project isolated from the community. So really thinking about connections, connecting points, not just for cars, but for people to get to the open space and people to get to neighborhoods to the north. Make sure this is a new part of your downtown. Not exactly the same, because there's probably a potential for some industrial or light industrial jobs. We certainly heard that loud and clear, but really this is an opportunity for housing and for housing diversity. And I think we have willing participants on all sides to make sure that vision occurs. And likewise in our residential focus areas, the key here is compatibility. There's a lot more room for growth based on what it's zoned and based on what's there. And really, we want to make sure in this comp plan process, we set up the goalposts for making those compatible transitions more easily done, and making sure that you don't have single family homes next to large multi-family projects, those kinds of things. And just exhibits that exact thing. This is a mix of housing types that you see in that residential focus area. You've got older apartments, you've got newer townhomes. So those are the school district homes on the middle left there. And you got older townhomes in the middle right. And then the bottom are the old single family homes, some of them very old. And they also, they contribute to your mix of housing and your diversity of housing. And we know that a lot of people don't want to see those things get lost as an opportunity for housing. So this is all these things are different. So we want to make sure that they're all compatible.
Sorry, Dave.
No, it's all right.
Hey, let me just wrap up real quick. We had some really good conversations recently about the climate action plan. I want to stress again, we're not asked to rewrite the climate action plan that you have, but make observations about what that plan policies stating and what some of the recommendations might be going forward. Our Cushing-Terrell in-house folks, we have a lot of great engineering and architectural folks who are specialized in sustainability and lead development. So this is really something that we pride ourselves on and really trying to drill into and understand from a energy performance standpoint when it comes to buildings. And we do have a pretty robust group of historic preservation groups that kind of ties those two things together as well. But the takeaway here is that your 2013 comp plan, the framework of the comp plan under 2.6 ecology and renewable energy identifies three frameworks: community, ecology, and economy. And at the time, these were great, and they're still applicable. But our observation is that we're in different time now. We've got some different circumstances that we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And so maybe there's some consideration for rethinking these three frameworks. Those three frameworks do identify specific goal statements. So there's the goal to reduce demand for energy and produce energy on a local level, to preserve the river corridors, and then to improve the watershed. And there's a whole series of objective statement or strategy statements that support each one of those goals. And that framework is something that we want to continue to build on. The framework, the goals and objectives that leads into key recommendations moving forward. And that's what we're working on right now. But, before I get there, again, from a climate action plan, the town of Carbondale is doing some remarkable things. You are extremely progressive when it comes to this topic in terms of other comparable communities your size, certainly. You've done it a lot since the 2013 plan adoption, and you continue to do a lot. And so we've been looking at these plan policies very closely to help make develop some key recommendations going forward. One of the things that we're proposing, and we did propose this to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and we followed up and presented this to the Board of Trustees as well, was to rethink that framework that I described of community, ecology, and economy, and bring it up to speed and talk about different framework: climate, resiliency, and equity. And when you think about it, each one of these frameworks, climate, resiliency, and equity, all of the things that we talk about throughout the planning process, whether it's housing diversity, aging in community, water resources, falls within one of these three categories. And so we presented this concept to both Planning and Zoning and Board of Trustees, and there was, I heard very strong support for considering this new framework. And so we're exploring this in more detail as we go forward in the next month or two. I just wanted to bring that to your attention. And then finally, real quick, just overall findings. I would say, given the time constraints and the, honestly, the budget that we've been working with, the public outreach events process has been pretty extraordinary. First of all, you have a great engaged community. People are wanting to get involved. It's a matter of us facilitating a process to make sure people had that opportunity. So I think we've been doing a really good job. We'll always hear some criticisms, but we respond to those criticisms in a positive way. Again, as Dave was talking about, the growth projections going forward, easily can be accommodated within your town limits. We don't feel that this is a stress point that you need to be worried about, that those geographical areas can certainly accommodate any projected growth. So inward growth seems like a reasonable policy. There is a lot of discussions about looking more closely at the UDC. And, let's be honest, that's not our task right now, but we want to make and clearly make these recommendations going forward. So the Planning and Zoning Commission and the Board of Trustees knows what the next steps are going forward. And so talking with you tonight is going to be really important to really understand that from a historic preservation standpoint. Residential infill focus, this is a big thing. We want to make sure that we're ensuring compatible design, whether those are historic resources or not. Just compatibility through urban form, neighborhood scale form is really important. Aging in the community is a really big topic within your community. How people that are getting older within the community have the ability to move throughout the community, access amenities, and go on with their daily lives in a normal way. And then, of course, as we just talked about, the climate action plan components and the recommendations that we've been thinking about going forward. So I just real quick, I want to wrap up. We have a series of community events coming up in October. The next 3 steering committees will be very focused on draft policies or draft key recommendations in September, followed by implementation strategies. So if you go to your 2013 comprehensive plan and you look at chapter 5, that's where the implementation strategies are. We're going to be reformatting those strategies to fit the new plan framework and then build on those strategies. And then ultimately in November, we'll be providing to the Planning Commission the draft comprehensive plan update that will then be forwarded to the Board of Trustees. So that was a lot of information, but we want to make sure that we have enough time to get your feedback as well on everything that you've seen here tonight.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any questions for CT? Commissioner questions? Don't be shy. Now's your chance.
Well, how are you going to lead us through a series of topics? Are we going to propose a series of topics and then kind of focus on those, or what is the format?
For tonight?
Yes.
The format is really to bring you up to speed on what the process has been to date, give you our observations of things that we've been hearing, and then listen to you as a very focused historic preservation commission to understand what your desires are moving forward, keeping in mind that the comp plan is a policy level document. What are the things that we need to be considering that we could then forward on behalf of your group to the planning department, to the Board of Trustees as they evaluate our findings. So it's really going to listen for us. It's listening to what your I don't want to say concerns, but what your issues might be then in terms of what's working, what's not working, what strategies you might be thinking about that we need to be aware of. So it's up to you to tell us what you want to tell us.
Well, I see two components to this, one being commercial and the other being residential. And those conversations are fairly different. We could launch into the historic commercial core to begin with and discuss why we aren't seeing development there and what we could do to enhance development, at the same time preserving the small town character and the historic buildings that we have.
That would be great, because I think in our observations, that's a real critical issue, whether it's a historic preservation set of lenses that we're looking at that or not. There's reasons why development has not occurred as expected and exploring what those reasons are is important. And then trying to understand what the historic preservation, historic resources role is in terms of preserving small town character. How do you preserve small town character, but also let the town grow in a sort of contemporary way? That's a really interesting conversation.
So, the downtown area, the historical commercial core, needs to be preserved, I think, is one of our major focuses here. But the owners, own these buildings that are very, very old. And in order to really do anything with them, they're gonna have to remodel them. And in the process of remodeling them, they're going to pretty much do away with the old town aspect of that, what that building contributes to the entire whole unity of the area. I would like to see the town step up and offer incentives, mainly financial incentives, to the owners to help them preserve the exterior of the buildings with financial incentives, so that they can remodel their building and get it up to code and make it more useful and income producing, and yet still maintain the historical value and significance of that building. So I don't know if the comp plan is the place to help talk the trustees into creating a fund for that, or going out and finding a
Grants.
the finding funds to do that, or not. So, and if that's for the commercial stuff, and for the residential, which is really more or less in the old town residential area, as opposed to, which is, I guess, not really a real part of this comp plan review. But the same issue there is being able to help help homeowners be able to maintain turn of the century architectural features of that specific area while they're building their new homes and maintaining, a good functional house or home, but not necessarily introducing new architectural features as opposed to turn of the century things like, being able to have flat roofs and cube homes are nice things to have, but not in an area that's called Old Town Residential. So somewhere we need to be able to incentivize the ability to build older style homes in that area, while we also increase the natural infill of that area, being able to introduce more ADUs or more or easily accessible ADUs, instead of having such a restrictive code for how or who can build an ADU, and make it easier to rent out rooms and increase the infill while we're still maintaining the integrity of the old style Carbondale, which basically is a lot of reasons why people came here, me, myself included, is that it's a small town, old town community feeling of being able to know your neighbors and walk around town, and you don't feel like you're walking around downtown Chicago or someplace. So I think we need to step up and create more funding for building and homeowners to have them create more older style or turn of the century. I like that term better. just, you can still have a new style, but keep it looking more like something that our founding fathers would have created.
I noticed on the future land use map from 2013 how hodgepodge all the districts are. We definitely need to like figure out how to like make it more cohesive. Like, why do we have downtown, Old Town, peripheral on north side and on the south side, and it's kind of separated? Maybe we should start doing like historical district neighborhoods and started doing that to get incentivize everybody to do that.
As an overlay district?
Overlays, like maybe do sections at a time, like a couple of streets at a time, maybe have something in common. And are we like planning, are we going to be planning to change the density? Like if it's low density, is it going to be eventually changed to medium density, or are we going to get medium density to high density in certain areas? Because if we're doing infill and actually put like mixed use residentials above commercial, like how much is going to be like changed in the zoning?
I'm sorry, I couldn't tell who was speaking and I wasn't quite hearing everything. I apologize.
Make sure your mic is on. It should have the red.
Oh, sorry, I didn't have it on.
That's way better.
What I was saying is that we were thinking of incentivizing doing historical district overlays for certain areas, because it's very hodgepodge on the map right now from the 2013. You have the north downtown area, and then you have like Old Town is like split between downtown and Old Town peripheral. Maybe we need to like connect them all a little bit better. And are we going to be changing zoning parts of it from like low density to medium and medium to high, depending how much we're going to infill in certain empty land plots?
Yeah, if that last part was a question, we're not proposing any zone changes, particularly in the downtown core. We might try to clarify the way your future land use map designates, like for instance, downtown north. It really designates it as a kind of a neighborhood or I'm not sure how they designate it, but it's just called downtown north. And it really doesn't describe what those uses are. We're going to take a close look at that, but we're not proposing any kind of a zone change for the core area. Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, one thought that I had is that economic activity, I'm speaking to the historic core, is directly proportional to the number of parking stalls. And right now, we have parking requirements for any new development in that area. We also have a lot of open space, large parcels. And maybe we should look at some sort of parking district that would take the onus off of individual developers and tackle the parking problem jointly. And right now we could, if we had bonding issues or some funding mechanism to purchase empty lots, we could use those as surface parking until such time as there was enough development pressure to build parking structures. And then with the parking structures have first floor retail, for example. But I really see one of the reasons we're not having a lot of development is the fact that parking is a problem.
It was definitely indicated to us by some participants as one of the contributing factors. And when we look at their zoning code and we look at the parking ratios, comparatively to other communities where we work in, the parking requirement is a little on the high side in terms of required parking per residential unit. It just seems a little bit high, but I don't know that that's a only contributing factor of why things haven't happened over the last 10 years. Certainly market variables, financial variables come into play. There might be other code related issues. We've heard from some people that the building height definition of 35 feet maximum in the downtown isn't working for constructability reasons. As you pointed out, the ground floor activation is a little outdated in terms of how we think about what we need to think about activation, particularly after the COVID or while we're in the midst of this COVID issue. Requiring so much retail is a little onerous, but activating ground floor level uses is important, and how we define that has been discussed. So there's probably a lot of contributing factors. Some people just don't want to move on their parcels. They just aren't ready to do anything. They don't want to do anything. So it's a number of things. I do have a question though regarding the last conversation about the overlay district. Many years ago, I was a planner at the city of Durango, and we have the Main Street Historic District in downtown Durango. We also have the Third Street Neighborhood Historic District, Third Street Boulevard. Well documented, been in place for many years. It's pretty successful. There are some absolute positives when it comes to that. Kind of controlling the historic nature and resources is one positive. It does provide some challenges to property owners that want to try to do things with their property. So they just have to buy into that when they buy into those districts. But has your group given serious thought, or have you talked about strategies like an overlay district and designating a specific area? Or is this just something that just once in a while comes up?
Well, we didn't go about overlay districts. That's actually a really good idea. Me being from Denver, originally the Baker district, and there's a lot of neighborhoods down there that have that, which I grew up knowing those districts instead of different directions of Denver. So I think that's actually a really good idea. But what we have been talking about is placards for houses, for homeowners that are in the structure of merit list that we already have. Do they want a placard either, right outside their home, or trying to designate that property as of historical importance and interest for the town of Carbondale? And I think the overlays would only just add to that idea. I know there is some pushback in what that means for the homeowners and their properties, and we're still working on what landmarking really means, or the plaques. For the plaques, just in our opinion, are really just to designate that property and put it as part of the walking tour for the Historical Society, just bringing more interest and potentially more revenue if people are interested in that into the town. But that's where we've been so far, is on the plaques.
Yeah, so the interpretive plaques and helping promote the resources for tourists is one thing. You could do that now. I mean, if you had some funding, you could do that, whether it's an overlay district or a landmark building. You could promote that concept now. The overlay district is a heavier lift. It's a zoning designation. It requires a lot of foresight and thought in terms of what are the ramifications, what are the benefits. By creating an overlay district, it takes a little bit of time to research that and really try to understand what the end result is that you're trying to achieve for the community. So we're absolutely happy to promote this discussion from a comprehensive plan level as we need to on your behalf. But it would be a good thing for us to really try to get some clarity on what are the strategies you think are feasible for the town of Carbondale. One of the things that the town staff has talked about is, they're not promoting this, but I think they're acknowledging it, that having some funding designation to make sure that the historic resource inventory is up to date every year, every few years, that you're coordinating with the State Historic Preservation Office to understand impacts of landmarking, districting, things like that, and just trying to take it to the next level incrementally. Without getting too far over the skis, so to speak. So there might be some key recommendations to setting aside, asking the Board of Trustees to set aside some funding to support the efforts that you're doing, and get a staff person on board to, do plan reviews and and so on and so forth. So there's things you could do that we could help contribute from a recommendation standpoint as it relates to the comp plan.
Well, one of the things we've discussed internally is to care for the character of the residential neighborhood, and Old Town residential specifically is to fold it into a review process that that helps ensure that there's compatibility, infill compatibility, so that the old character isn't overwhelmed by new construction. And it would be similar to the review process for the commercial area. Commercial area has design guidelines, which I don't know if you've had a chance to review those, but they're actually quite good at addressing infill and maintaining kind of the historic nature in terms of mass and scale to the existing fabric. It would be, I think it would be important for the residential area, Old Town residential specifically, to have a similar review process. Again, we understand we don't want to step on anybody's property rights, but we do want to have at least the ability to input some level of consideration into a new structure and infill. So we have been talking about that for some time.
Is it taking you as far as suggesting or recommending to the Planning and Zoning Commission to conduct what I would paraphrase as a residential infill development standards, which is a sort of a hybrid form-based code approach to not regulating the uses, but really trying to understand the urban form or the neighborhood scale form, and trying to develop more specific standards that as things like ADUs come online, that you are not preventing the ADU from happening, but you're making sure that that ADU is compatible with the adjacent properties or the back properties. Have you ever had that conversation about, recommending that the town conduct a, what I would call a residential infill design standards supplement as a part of the code?
No, that conversation has not been had. It sounds like a good direction.
We actually did have infill design guidelines and standards, and those were taken out with the adoption of the UDC in 2016, mainly because really a lot of citizens, staff at that time, architects, other focus groups felt that they were not working as they should be. So we've been down that road before.
But I think with the need for affordable housing and density increase, the UDC accessory dwelling units are really critical part to that, and we really need to look at how units that are really difficult to plan now because of ordinance requirements, how to ease that a little bit so that we can see more of that happening. I see that small scale being compatible with maintaining Carbondale's small town character and funkiness. And the accessory dwelling unit is really a critical component.
Yeah, it seems like you could find a balance between property rights, the ability to do what you envision or want with your property, but also managing it in a way that preserves that urban form, that neighborhood form. I would just, I don't know the history of why the 2016 amendment failed or didn't go through or was withdrawn, but again, back in Durango, we did a residential infill development standards. We used Nori Winter out of Boulder to help us with that. There's a lot of great people that do this work, but that's a model that you might want to look at is the city of Durango's residential infill standards, and they have been pretty successful. They dealt with the same issues that you're dealing with, right? So too restrictive, not restrictive enough. So might be something you might want to, and there, it's not just Durango. There's other communities that have been doing some great work as well.
Well, if I may, I would just like to add my 2 cents. It seems to me that this may have already been discussed, but I want to reinforce my personal interest in finding a way to activate the historic commercial core, both for residential purposes and also for economic purposes. And it seems to me that, some of the issues, well, as you walk down Main Street, it becomes fairly evident fairly quickly that there are a number of vacancies along Main Street that, in my view, shouldn't be vacant. And for some reason they are. Vacant storefronts. And then on top of that, we've got a number of lots that have no development on them at all. Especially in that northeast corner, there's quite a bit of red. And to me, history preservation is directly related and linked to maintaining a pedestrian scale. And I think that for some reason, at some point during, in the past, for whatever reason, we got off the rails on that and started to develop very heavily and are continuing to develop very heavily along the 133 corridor, to some degree, to the demise of 133. It seems to me that the restaurants, there's a restaurant row almost along Main Street that seems to be fairly successful, but not a lot of retail. And I don't know why retail is afraid of Main Street. I don't know what it is about. What I've heard, what I hear is from retail owners, just a few that I've spoken to about this, is that they just don't get the volume. They don't get the eyes. There aren't enough eyeballs walking up in east-west along Main Street, but we're getting plenty of windshields along 133, and it's just a matter of convenience. So people are able to drive their car directly to a massive parking lot, park their car right in front of the store, walk 10 steps from their car to the store, buy a pair of sneakers, and it's just so convenient, right? So somewhere along the line, we as a community have sacrificed Main Street for convenience. And this has become a political issue. I just read an article in the New York Times about it. I think it was in Slate, that pedestrian walkability is now a political issue. It's you've got one group saying that they want a city built for cars, and another group saying they want a city built for people, and that's just the way it's come down once again. But as a commissioner here on this HPC, I have to say again that there's a clear link in my mind between history preservation and pedestrian scale. And if we're talking about multimodal transportation, we need to kind of bring that back to that conversation in a meaningful way. So I would put, then, I'm gonna, turn it on, I'm gonna kick the can here and say, does CT have recommendations? Is there precedent, or is there some sort of, fine tuning that can be done to the comp plan that could promote this pedestrian scale and bring back some vitality to downtown, thereby reducing potentially some convenience to the residents of Carbondale, whether they like it or not.
Yeah, Nick, those are great observations. When I look at your downtown, and when I also look at the downtown north, from an economic standpoint, I go, where is the 100% corner? Where's that corner where people know that they're there, and every corner is the most viable retail experience? Where is that? And sometimes in these linear downtowns, they can be more than one corner, right? But you have to create that experience from one corner to the next. So it's a kind of a strategy plan that's about economics, it's about placemaking, it's about experiential. But let me ask you this question. When you talk about pedestrian scale, do you believe that you can create look at those two large red squares there, the parking lot and then the one to the north? What if you created a concentrated use there that was hospitality, that was engaging restaurant at the ground level and something else, and you created a there, but it was sitting at 4 stories or more? Do you think you can create a pedestrian experience at 4 stories, 4 to 5 stories? Or is that, no, it has to be lower than that. It has to be no more than 3.
Personally, I am not opposed to a 4th story at all. I know that there's a big pushback. I know that people, have straight up said to me that they would quit the project if a 4th story was proposed. But I have tried to bring projects to developers, and they have not been able to pencil it out. They can't get in. So, and this is an interesting market, right? We've got, a main level of commercial that can't find tenants. And then we've got, potentially 2 stories of residential units where, 20% of those residential units are affordable units, and the burden is on the developer to flip the bill on those affordable units, and you can't make it work. Parking is not really an issue. There aren't really parking requirements associated with these lots, but parking's still a problem. But it's the commercial component and the affordable component that's killing the project. Now, everybody wants commercial and affordable, but, and then, so where's the tax base to help, to help subsidize it? We got to make something, we got to make it attractive to somebody to come in here and do one of these projects. It's not gonna come out of thin air. So I don't know what the solution is, but we can't pencil it out.
So on the mixed use commercial thing, do we have to incentivize by having one of the apartments as affordable housing for the employee that works in the business? And do that and have one free market? If it's like a 2-story or 3-story, one is going to be a smaller one. I mean, they do that in Aspen all the time. I even saw something on Aspen Glenwood MLS, where in Basalt, they are selling right next to CCY Architects, and the person that lives in the apartment building that's attached to what used to be an old dentist they have 2,000 square foot of office space. You have the whole weird vitality zone thing going on in Basalt, but the apartment above it, you have to have the employee of the business down there live in there.
I think in that case, I'm not sure who's talking. I can't see him. Forgive me.
That'd be me.
Who's me?
Heather.
Heather. Hi, Heather. I think Aspen's got a little bit of a different scenario where they've got, they have so many programs that are paying into affordable housing that the burden is not placed directly and squarely in the lap of the developer. Makes it a little bit different. I think that's, but to your point, Keith, a fourth story adds another whole plate of residential units. All of a sudden, that changes the dynamics of the project. It creates a potential feasibility there because you got more units overall supporting the commercial, which really isn't making a whole lot of money. And maybe that pencils out. Maybe that's the way to do it. It adds cost.
It adds cost, and then back to, I think someone's comment earlier about parking and shared parking. Shared parking is a really tricky thing. You have to get the right mix of day and nighttime uses and proximity to make sure that parking is available for both those day and nighttime uses. So a building that has both employment in the daytime and residential at night, that's the shared parking magic, right? That happens. And it's tough to make it work at a small scale like this. If you were to take downtown North and say, look, let's treat this as an entire district, parking district, that purple area, and you really try to concentrate uses at that 100% corner, you could find some opportunities to make shared parking work in that district. But your downtown is so compartmentalized and segmented, it's really hard to get that large a volume of parcel area to make the uses work, to make shared parking work the way it's designed to work. I don't know if that makes sense to everybody, but so it's a bit of a challenge. But the easier thing is to really evaluate your parking ratios and say, let's reduce the parking requirements and let the market determine what's needed. Developers and financial folks, they're pretty savvy about this, but if they're told to park at 1.8 or 2 unit parking spaces per unit, that's a bit high in our experience. And when you're trying to create a kind of a dynamic, walkable, concentrated place. So it's complicated stuff. We always like to say jokingly, form follows parking. It's true.
Yeah. So is that, I don't really fully understand what the future holds for downtown North. I don't know that anybody does. I don't know who owns it. I don't know if there's anything for sale there currently. I don't know if anybody's talking about putting something up for sale. John, I don't know if you have any comments on that.
Oh no, which properties?
Downtown North.
Briston Peterson owns all of that. And then where you look at, yes, stay there, Keith. So where it says downtown North and you have Merrill, where it actually curves around, you have Ballantyne, Carpet and all that right there to the east of Merrill. And then the kind of weird shape pie long thing, that's the Cypress Lodge senior housing. And then so is right there. But
So
everything underneath downtown North is owned by Briston Peterson, and then where Little Blue used to be, and then there's that weird apartment complex there. That's pretty much all one ownership, the largest chunk right there.
Yeah, it's one ownership, but 2 designated plats.
Yep, exactly.
With the exception of this
Yep,
unit,
exception
everything
of
else
Cypress.
here is one ownership, 2 plats, 2 legal plats.
And nothing's on the market currently.
No.
It's not on the market, but we've been talking with them through the focus groups, and they have, ideas that they want to generate. We've looked at several conceptual plans that have been generated. There's one of the plans we looked at is potentially, 170, almost 200 units.
Yeah.
On this purple area, excluding the, I think it's that assisted living down the corner.
Yep.
Yeah. And that concept was, sort of a takeoff of a new urbanist approach that various housing typologies. It had a little bit of retail clustered here by the Rio Grande Trail. It was a couple of good concepts we saw. So they've been thinking about this, but they want to try to let this comprehensive plan kind of work its way out so that there's some consensus building through this process before they advance a submittal.
Well, I guess, yeah, I mean, in summary, I'm kind of long-winded here and I apologize for that, but I really, I don't, in terms of concepts, in terms of goals, I think in my view, a goal would be to, invigorate the pedestrian historic commercial core. I know there's a way to do it. I just don't know how. I mean, what comes to mind is that, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I would say one thing that we're currently doing is blocking off Main Street Thursday through Sunday night, and that's really sort of making it more pedestrian and successful for a lot of these restaurants that are kind of struggling in the pandemic. And I think maybe that's a strategy to continue as we work our way out of the pandemic.
That would definitely increase the number of pedestrian walkers, eyes looking in stores, and retailers would be they'd be looking at more and more retail. Retailers may like that, blocking off Main Street for that time, get more pedestrian traffic going, and shopping and eating, going to the movie, making it more of an historic downtown area, preserving the nature and character of the old town, getting funding for the owners to be able to maintain their building while they also maintain the historic exterior of it. I think that'd be a good idea, Jess.
One thing that we do now is the farmers market, and that's a great success, although a lot of the lunch places in town have often complained that they're not getting any business during that market, and it's kind of backfiring on that front.
Yeah, I would be more draconian about it, and it seems to me that, like, if I had to do it over again, I would have taken that that big trapezoid on the north center of downtown and put City Market there and forced people to go there, park their car. Yep, right there. That's City Market. Park their cars and somewhere in north, right on the other side of, park their cars on that south square. That's just to the south of the trapezoid. That'd be the parking lot. And that would force people into downtown. It would force people to park their cars, walk across, shop, and then bleed into the rest of downtown. That might be enough. Some big draw, like a supermarket or, Trader Joe's comes to mind. Some big draw that everybody in the valley wants to go to. Force them to go downtown.
Well, I'm familiar with some of the businesses that are being kicked out of North Downtown, and those are all local businesses, fairly small scale. I don't know where to interject this in terms of our historic aspects, but I think one of the components that we need to identify and build to is our artist community and our live work studios. That's a really important part of Carbondale. It gives us our creative mix. And some of those businesses are just going to be displaced with the urbanization of the North Downtown. I've seen very successful kind of small scale warehouses where small businesses, entrepreneurs can get a start. And I would like to see some of that either in our commercial core or downtown north, some of that go to our residents as opposed to just retail and more urban dwellers.
Office space is very successful in downtown in HCC. There's a lot of office space. It's all occupied, as far as I know. There's probably some vacancy that I'm not aware of, but it seems to be fairly successful.
Our
I think the
understanding
only
that there's about
vacancy is
100.
the one over across from Fat Belly, that building. Yeah, that thing's constantly on
Sure.
MLS.
That's Jess's bill.
Oh,
It is.
We've heard that there's about 100, Dave, I think we calculated there's about 150, 160 jobs right now in downtown north. Just supporting the industrial uses that are there, the truck wash. I've heard that number.
About 50 or 60 tenants currently.
Yeah, it's quite a few jobs, actually. So trying to be sensitive about not displacing and losing all those jobs or replacing them with different kinds of creative, flexible workspace, maker space type uses that are more micro scaled. That's what this third bullet is really trying to get at, is trying to be sensitive to the kinds of jobs that are there now. And maybe they're not the long-term jobs for the site in the long haul, but replacing them with some sort of creative maker space, feels right to us. So the other thing I'll say about the downtown, it just feels like there's, these are all individually owned properties, of course, but there's some capacity about having a consolidated vision for the downtown that starts to think about literally consolidating parcels and thinking about larger moves that are off the main street, but creating a development concept that is complementary to the main street. So it doesn't necessarily have to be all retail at the ground level. It could be live workspaces at the ground space, which is activating the ground. But you need larger number of parcels or larger acreage to make, to your point, Nick, to make it pencil out if you're going to try to get affordable housing units in there as well.
mm-hmm.
So just looking at the pattern of those red spaces, the two large boxes is one thing. Maybe this little street in between is not a street as we see it today. Maybe it's a Warnoff or more of a pedestrian muse or something else, and you consolidate or
Mm-hmm.
develop these two parcels so they're compatible with each other.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we've gone over time, and I apologize, CT. I know that you guys, are working hard. Any final thoughts?
I've got before we close, I've got a couple things I really want to throw in here.
Please.
One is in whatever planning we have going on, I think we really need to expand our open ditch system. Our open ditch system is critical for our landscape, and they're historic ditches, and access to ditch water is really a benefit to both the city and the property owners. So I'd hate to lose or just pave over our ditches. The other thing, I don't show it, but I'm a big railroad buff fan, and I would really like to see any infrastructure that is put into the Rio Grande Trail not preclude future light rail. And I wish our Roaring Fork Valley would really get their act together and plan for the possibility of future light rail. Talk about building vitality to our downtown. A train stop there would do it. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any other final thoughts?
That's it.
Thank you, Eric. Okay. If there's nothing more, I'd like to thank CT very much for their time and their expertise. Terrific presentation, and thanks for all the hard work. We're looking forward to seeing some really good potential proposed policy that supports HPC's goals.
Sounds good.
And other goals. I know that, we're a special interest and there's a lot out there. So really appreciate your hard work.
It's been our pleasure so far. We really love working with everybody we've met in the town. So thank you very much.
Yep, thank you.
Okay. So that will adjourn the meeting for tonight. Thank you all very much, and we'll see you next month. Do we need to, is that right? Or do we need to make a motion to adjourn?
Yep, motion.
Would someone like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I did the last one.
I'll make a motion.
I'll
Okay.
second it.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much. Have a great night.
Vote on it, but what the hell?